Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Jennifer, welcome to Consulting Leaders.
Thank
Happy to
you.
have you.
I love it.
Let's jump straight into it.
Mm-hmm.
What got you into this space? What was the moment where you realized, culture and inclusion weren't HR topic, but actual leadership topics?
Oh, I love that question. I was previously an opera singer in New York City. So that was an intense and ultimately disappointing foray into that career because I lost my voice and I had to get surgery. But what I reinvented into quite accidentally is into this master's program in organizational development and change. And within that program, I was exposed to leadership and facilitation and adult learning and change theories and consulting skills to the organization and to leaders. And I just got bitten by the bug. I mean, I thought this is something I can be good at. I care and am very interested in people and the psychology of change. I'm interested in systems and how they change to benefit the individual. And I ended up studying that. And it's always formed now, many, many years later, the basis of how I approach inclusive leadership. It has to be a systems lens, and it has to center the leaders, the leader behavior, the leader choices, the leader's courage, et cetera. And I have to say on a personal note, this was always very important to me because I'm in the LGBTQ community, but struggled with feeling included. So the whole kind of dance of my work has been to kind of solve a problem that I was acutely aware of on a personal level in the corporate world many, many years ago when it was not as comfortable as it is now. And I would not call it comfortable now, but it was so different back then. And it really felt like a frontier, like we were building something really exciting for the next generation to feel safe at work and therefore able to do their best work.
Interesting, the context, because so thanks a lot for this, first of all, Jennifer, and opening about it. I've recently been to New York for the first time of my life, and I went to see, it wasn't opera, it was a Broadway show. I don't know if you've seen And Juliet. And you can, have you seen it?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Oh my God. So,
Incredible.
I mean, I didn't have any idea of how, and I don't say this in a negative way, but how woke the show was, but it was hilarious. I was like, and sometimes I was the only one laughing in the whole room, but I absolutely love it. So it's interesting to see the roots of where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But so get it, that makes a lot of sense. Here we go. That's for the personal little anecdote here. So back to your business. What's the core problem that you're solving now that we have a little bit of context? What do you help your clients solve for exactly?
So my clients are aware that culture and everyday experience and the relationship between those who are hired to do a job and the company really matters. Like that matters for productivity, bottom line results. Great teams trust each other. They feel seen and heard, and they stay longer. The retention goes up, the engagement levels go up. So, my clients understand this. And I think bringing me in the way I talk about inclusive leadership is disarming and not centered around shame and blame for not knowing the answer or how to be better. But I'm the kind of person and teacher and educator that meets people where they're at and, lays out a process by which leaders of all generations can move towards their own evolution. Because really, that's what we're talking about at the end of the day. We all need to evolve. We must. If we are in the business world and we are leading, it's got to be uncomfortable. We have to be on our edge all the time. Otherwise, we're not leading. And, leading inclusively is not something that has been core or central to the business world's thinking, until, we sort of had this. I mean, I've been in the work 20 years, but 2020 was certainly this massive growth and aha moment for so many. And many things happened subsequently that I agree and disagree with relating to the conversation and the work. But But that was a realization that humans were not feeling able to do their best work, safe enough to do their best work, trusted to do it in the organization. So it was just to me, it was a business problem. And it was really a leadership evolution problem, particularly for older generations who came to work, who put up with whatever they put up with, who assimilated, who compromised, who sacrificed, because it was all about the job. And the job was job and life was life. And these two things lived separately. But the pandemic and everything erased all of that. And also younger generations had no time for that and have no time for that. So there are all these giant changes happening that I think inclusiveness is one key consideration. But I think there's like a lot of wrenching change going on in our relationship to work fundamentally. And I think that's what fascinates me, especially these days.
So once a leader achieves their best self for themselves, but also for their team, and allow everybody to perform at their best because they feel safe and comfortable doing so, what's the outcome that this helps achieve, right? The reason I'm asking this is, I think obviously we are in a day and age, although with the latest political movements, there is movements in there, but let's say diversity, inclusion, it has known a big push over the last few years. And I'd really love to talk about the outcome, the benefits that this brings once we properly put it in place. So from your experience, since you're walking the talk, right? You're doing the job. What benefits does that allow a company, a team to get?
Yeah. You said the key word is properly put it in place. I think we didn't do the best job. We tried a lot of different ways into this conversation. We thought hiring more diversity, a visible diversity dimensions would solve the problem, but it didn't, because it wasn't accompanied with inclusive behaviors on the part of leaders, right? And then we might have had inclusive leaders, but with no diversity. So we had groupthink. So what we're always trying to get right, I think, is this creative abrasion, this bumping up against each other, our experiences, our lived experiences, not just what we went to school for, but who we are and what community we live in, and how products and services and marketing slogans land on us, both as employees and as customers, and that insight is gold for companies. But you're not going to get it if people are uncomfortable and don't trust their colleagues and their company. They're not going to give the discretionary effort that we really want. We want people thinking about, how do I solve this? Like, what are some out of the box ideas that I have from my experience, from the walk that I've walked, the life that I've lived, the culture that I come from. These are ways for companies to truly get the insight and the intelligence about the communities and the customers that they're allegedly selling products and services to. So without this, you can pay consultants all day long to show you the data and like whatever, but you're still going to make mistakes, because it's not going to be directly, it's about those people, but it's not going to be directly from people in that demographic. So if every business's customer base is changing all the time, it's changing demographically. It's changing. There's a giant, for example, wealth transfer to women generationally, giant. Like the more wealth is going to be held by women, more decisions, more buying decisions, et cetera. And so any company ignoring that and saying, well, we don't need then more women on teams, we don't need to achieve any sort of parity, we can build this about women without them at the table. Good luck. These things have failed in the past. And I think it really behooves the company to stay close to this, to prioritize it, and to say it's better for innovation. It's better so that we don't make costly mistakes. So just super critical. But so that kind of answers your question, I hope. We need all of that juice. We need the most from every human, and we need that group of humans to think about problems in 20 different ways. Because really, especially now, problems are complex. They are nonlinear. Everything is extremely ambiguous. And now more than ever, you need diversity of thought. Like now more than ever. Groupthink is an incredibly risky thing. And we've got AI entering the picture, where AI is, yes, amazing, but also biased. Because a very homogeneous group of people have built AI, and AI has digested an internet full of bias. So you literally have got this challenge now of eradicating something in humans that's always been true about us. If we're human, we're biased. But now we have this tool that's been trained on our biases. So that's going to be a really sticky situation for companies to figure out. How are you going to spot that so that you don't build the wrong products and services, and you don't launch the wrong thing, and you don't miss the mark?
I was going to say so funny. I don't know if that's the term, but I happen to have two little sisters who are very strong feminists, which is a good thing. And one of them is a she's a PhD, and now she's doing some postdoc research. And she was explaining me that in the health space, and it starts to be renowned now, but it wasn't like 5 years ago. But like all the researchers that were made to test drugs and like test solutions to heal diseases weren't properly tested on women because it was much more complex, especially because of the hormonal cycle. And we end up in a world where it's harder to treat an ill woman than an ill man, and like a gazillion things like this. And me, an entrepreneur, when she tells me this, I'm like, but there is such a business opportunity here. Like there is so much money to be made if we can cure women of certain diseases that they are not properly getting cured for right now. So, I mean, that's I don't know if it's a humble participation to the conversation, but to say, even if we stay very capitalistic and we're like, the point is to make money, which I get some people focus on, there is value in including properly, and I'm talking about women specifically here, but that's true for gender, that's true for race, that's true for everything. There is so much money to be made. So if that's the only motivator, it's still, there is still some interest to be had here.
Yes.
So back to you. Who do you help doing all this? Like, who's your ICP? Who do you help specifically? Who benefits the most from your coaching and consulting services?
Well, when I've written my books, I've had that leader in mind of a certain generation and honestly identity, because white men dominate leadership ranks in most companies. So, and of a certain generation. So I had that group in mind, mostly because I've spent so much time with them and I kind of can read their minds at this point. And, I am in many ways, although female, from that demographic. So there are ways that I think I can step into those shoes and feel that experience, but then there are ways that I don't, as LGBTQ, as female, as I said. So anyway, I know that group intimately, generationally, I know them too. But then I really love raising up and inspiring and comforting emerging, rising leaders. I think that I pay attention to both, and I really invest in both. And I am almost a bridge between them. I'm a communicator and a translator between the wants and needs and hopes and aspirations and expectations, for example, of younger generations when they come into a workplace that feels really misaligned, and where they go back in the closet, or they all of a sudden don't feel safe giving their out of the box idea, or they feel it's just a very risk averse, fear-based culture. I want their experience to be different. I really do, because I remember that experience. And I think our work in my generation is to make that better. We must leave the workplace better, healthier, more productive, a place where people want to be and are proud of the work that they do in their contribution. But we see super low engagement numbers across the board. So I don't think leaders are doing this well. They're not somehow cascading trust to people, even with bad news. It doesn't need to be Pollyanna, everything's great. It's not. There's a lot of hard news right now. Layoffs, restructurings, what they're doing with AI. Leaders are in a real pinch, and it's never been harder to be a leader with integrity right now. Never been harder, and it's not going to get easier. So I really have so much compassion for those leaders, and that's who I've written for, because I want them, with one decision, one remark, one choice, they can impact thousands of people in a system. The shape is like this, right? I mainly serve corporate. So, it's helpful actually to have, engaged C-suite, and then to think about, how do things cascade, and where does that get lost in translation? Where does it get, diluted? Where does it disappear? Where does it not reach the intended audience within the organization? And then by proxy, doesn't reach the intended customer on the outside of the company as well. But it all starts from the leader. So that's why I kind of always have gravitated to it. And I'm just honestly just fascinated with the journey of leaders. Like it is a complex, difficult, sort of taxing. I mean, leadership forces you to look in the mirror about who you are. Are you proud when you put your head on the pillow every night? Do you have a legacy that you're happy with? What matters to you? Because you can steer so many things so easily because of the power that you have in the structure. And I desperately want younger talent to thrive. I want them to thrive, and they cannot do that alone. They can't do that themselves. There's a lot that they can do, and I give them a lot of ideas, but ultimately it has to be a system-wide effort. And believe me, I don't see this very often, what I'm describing. I mean, there's holes everywhere. There's missed opportunities everywhere, whether it's poor leadership at the top or great leadership at the top, but the messy middle, we call it the frozen middle, where things just go to die, or lack of engagement amongst emerging talent. And, you'll do engagement surveys and you'll hear it loud and clear. Do you think you can be anything at this company? Do you have mentors? Do you feel supported? Do you feel that, you're treated fairly with fair access to opportunities? I mean, it all comes out in the data. So there's a lot of entry points to companies, but each one is unique, which is the fun part about being a consultant.
You hit on the bullseye here. From the experience that I have from a big consulting firm, let's call it like this, it's also that this middle management that you mentioned is catapulted into a management position without proper training. And I've seen it and I've experienced it. And I understand, right? The top performers, you want to incentivize them to stay and to keep on working hard, so you promote them. And there is still a gazillion projects, things going on, and they're like, yeah, handle those 2-3 juniors who need guidance, help, a certain way of tackling things to feel heard. And it's like sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't, because people are just not trained. So I can only imagine how it must be for people of members of minorities on top of that. Yeah. Do you see differences between industries, company size? What I'm trying to say is, do you have a specific ICP in the sense of an industry, a niche, a company size, or at the end of the day, it's industry agnostic, size agnostic, people are people, and everybody needs help? How do you approach that?
It is kind of size and industry agnostic. Honestly, I've worked across, every industry, and I wouldn't say I have a specialty. Some industries have been at this longer, and I think that provides a different familiarity and almost like there's a tradition of leadership development in certain companies. And there's also, they've been through all the eras of training, for example, in education and being held accountable, like for decades. I mean, in the banking world, and this is surprising maybe to some, but that is where the most mature efforts that I've ever seen exist in financial services. They are the longest standing. They are the best funded. They sort of spare no expense. And they happen to be some of the biggest firms too, like the big insurance companies. Insurance, believe it or not, is slow and steady and very reliable on this work. So, tech it's more kind of, I'd say, trend related. And it's so fast moving. I'll tell you, like, I was in fashion for a while. I would never want to do this work in fashion. I had such a hard time nailing down when I was in charge of running programs for development for the leadership in like a fashion company in retail. It's very difficult because it's very sort of short-term thinking, market-based. Every season, it was these leaders who were sort of focused on product. But any company that is extremely close to their customers, like financial services, is going to think very hard about this, because they know that it's not just a money choice. It is a choice of fit and culture and reputation and the brand. And people can change, all the time based on all these things. And people are more aware. Customers are more aware, and they're more informed, and they are more willing to put their money where their mouth is, for example. But so anyway, I think I would say the better metric is a super engaged CEO and board and executive team is what I need to be successful. Like I need that. And it's very difficult. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult without that. Then it all lines up. And then what I need is some kind of instigation or urgency or missed opportunity or competitive pressure for a company to say, we are missing the boat, we are not getting this right, and it is a problem for us. And that can be a company of 2,500 people, and it can be a company of 300,000 people. And I've, been to both. And by the way, nonprofits are an interesting side note. We all assume they might have it all figured out because they're mission driven. Not at all. Sometimes I have enjoyed my corporate client almost like I would expect to enjoy a nonprofit client, where like values are very, aligned and apparent, and they lead with them, et cetera. But there can be so much dysfunction in the advocacy world as well. It can be a mess, and you can have poor leadership, you can have toxic environments. In fact, sometimes we laugh about it, that they can be actually in weird ways more toxic because there is this attitude of, well, we get it. We're good at that. We're fine. We don't need that. So it's really interesting to, have a favorite corporate client that people are like, who is this company? I've never heard of them. Like they build widgets, what? But consultants will love working with them because they're so committed and they're so fun to work with, and they hit the ground running with you. And they really are not in the why question. Why are we doing this? This is such a pain. It's such a burden. To, we are rolling up our sleeves, and we need, you, Jennifer, and team to help us, lay out all the ways that we can go. That is like a fabulous attitude to come to. And I have found that in the most unlikely places, honestly.
It's so it's interesting. Back to your point around, you need a committed CEO, leadership, a sense of urgency, which I think is the perfect segue into kind of the next section of this podcast, which is, how do you ensure that? How do you market? How do you brand? How do you educate? Making your target clients, your ICP, the decision makers, educated, problem aware, solution aware, and then start taking action. What has worked for you? So the book, I suspect, we're going to talk about it. But what else has worked for you, Jennifer, to get the attention of the right people that have a sense of emergency because they need to act now?
Yeah, it's not everyone. It's usually a minority within a company. You've got your super champions, and I think locating them early in the process and enlisting them, making sure they're on the team that you're working with, making sure they're that they have a voice and they have a visible role. So identifying those within a company is sometimes difficult, but they will show up. They will be in the meetings. They will be in the committees. They will have already sort of cultural leadership roles, right? Volunteer sort of roles. Like they will have raised their hand for things. But then, it's like a bell curve, right? You've got the early adopters, and then you've got this big section in the middle of the sort of reticent, reluctant learner. And that whole group requires, I think, to see those early adopters leading so those early adopters are normalizing the conversation, and ideally they're very senior. So there's also a little bit of an expectation that everybody get on board, but bringing that middle along, even like 10% is considered a success, but it's very hard to measure these things. But you do it in a combination of, I think, carrot and stick, honestly. Like there's accountability metrics, there's, expectations that I think should be coming from the top, and, accountability tied to compensation, clear behavioral expectations and competency development. And then you have to give people education, training, and support to change behavior. It is so not an overnight experience, and you can't just use the stick. You can't just come from a what gets measured gets done attitude. You can't measure something that somebody doesn't understand, and they don't understand how to be that. They don't understand what they're doing that's not meeting that expectation. It's very difficult for us humans to see ourselves leading and to see ourselves accurately, particularly around something that, like I said earlier, generationally, we haven't grown up thinking about and seeing and experiencing directly. So leaders have to almost shapeshift and like get into other people's consciousness and experience and imagine and be super curious about, how is my leadership landing for people? Because there's so much I'm not aware of. So closing that awareness gap, and then that requires courageous leaders to be vulnerable, to say, I don't know the answers, and to be hungry for development. Which I also think is, I say this, but I think this is very difficult. People are distracted, they're busy, they don't think it's a priority. So it's a struggle. It's always been a struggle for 20 years to choose the field that I've chosen, because this isn't change and adoption that is just a slam dunk. It's hard. People avoid it. People are defensive about it. It brings up all kinds of noise. And so the path I have to walk to get to somebody, to create the aha moment, to then hope that I can help motivate them, which, look, I'm one person. We're one team, and we're up against, I think, a lot of just human reticence to change, and our reticence to evolve, and reticence to feel uncomfortable, because change is uncomfortable. So what am I going to do? I'm busy. I avoid it. I have other priorities. Nobody's holding me accountable. I don't understand it. I feel threatened by it. You line up all of that, and it's very difficult to get in there with this message that we've been talking about. So, and that is difficult, but it's also like such an amazing, you talk about opportunity to think about, how do you do that? Like, how do you kind of fight all of those obstacles and get through to leaders? And it's what makes this work kind of endlessly interesting to me. But ultimately, I do know that I've picked a very difficult thing to try to accomplish. And I wonder why sometimes.
This it feels like you're very much mission driven, right, and impact driven. So that's the type of industry someone like you would go into. So I think that's super clear for the kind of the messaging and the positioning, right? What people need to start thinking about and knowledge and work on. Can you tell us a bit more about what has worked for you to get that message across? And here I'm really talking about what marketing channel has worked for you, Jennifer, to get that message in front of the right people, right? Because something that a lot of people fall into is the vanity metrics, like, oh yeah, I can get lots and lots of views. But what matters at the end of the day for B2B coaches and consultants is to get the visibility in front of the right people. So for you, can you walk us through what has worked for you to get that message across to the leaders and the leadership teams?
Yeah. I have not done business development and marketing in a very traditional way. And I think that's been intentional, because my world is based on trust, literally, like the trust in me as a person, me as the founder, me as the name on the door. I don't, and some people don't call their company their name. I get it. But at the end of the day, there is a person and a founder there. Companies, this is tricky work. It's tricky and it's nuanced. So if you are listening to this and you're in one of those trust-based buyer decisions, you have to go about this differently. You cannot have products off the shelf. You can in your mix, but I don't think you can lead with it. I think my angle has been to establish myself as a thought leader. From the very beginning, I was writing white papers, doing research with my clients, giving my clients helpful benchmarking as far as I could. We've never been a research firm, but I did my best to make sure that information was circulating amongst the companies that I was working with. And I was always at conferences moderating panels with all these clients and prospects, like always in the space where my field was gathering and where that learning and those conversations were happening about tough problems. And I put myself there, and I love facilitating and speaking. So it's very fortunate that I could just say to conference organizers, like, I'm here, I'll moderate, I'll put a panel together, I'll bring my clients. We will do this, series of breakout sessions, and we'll talk about these topics that are hot and on people's minds. I was always in the mix, and I was always writing about it too. So I think the visibility coupled with the generosity of positioning yourself to better a field that your clients are in, it generates really wonderful goodwill that results then in the pull to you versus push from a marketing perspective. So, I have magnetized, I think, people to us through writing, through books, certainly. If somebody says to me, which they have, I read your book and it changed everything for me, or it brought me into this work, or I learned about the work from you, or I began this whole other era of my professional life because I saw you, and then I got bitten by, I had my aha moment, and I got bitten by the work, and I decided this is my passion. So I think if you can think about how do you better your field in material ways, and how do you show up in the conversations, how do you give as much as you ask for, there will be a gratitude flywheel effect. And we've never really had to cold call. We've never really had to sell in a lot of the traditional ways because of that reputation that we've built. I also think we've been incredibly tactical and practical. My books, while I've wanted to write theoretical books, I think my last one I wrote, the publisher's like, create a model, do a 5-step process, give leaders something that's extremely simple, extremely tangible, make your book short, make it simple. And that was incredibly good advice, and I followed it. And I think having a model, it's not my entire work, but I do have a leadership model that leaders can follow step by step and feel seen, feel that the struggle is being acknowledged, and that there is a difficult evolution like in front of all of us, and to feel that they can name where they are in the change process. That's been an enormously helpful thing to have. I mean, it's one of the things I'm known for now, and the book has done extremely well. And I think it is because it was written in the right way. It was practical enough, and it was very, very welcoming into a really difficult topic.
I think the very point that you started with, right, around trust. I think I had a guest say, and I'm quoting her almost every episode, it was a woman. She said that we live in a trust recession world and time.
Yeah.
And I think that couldn't be more true for any industry. And the reason is anybody can claim anything on the internet nowadays. And I think you give yourself a little bit less credit than should, Jennifer, because putting a book out there, going to speak at conferences, putting content out there without pushing services, but more like showing proof of what you're doing and that you're an expert at what you do. And I say this also for the people listening to us, right? Our belief is that in 2026, the B2B coaches and consultants who are going to win are the ones who are able to provide value in a way that AI doesn't, whilst being authentic. And I think it doesn't have to be cold call, although I know people who do cold call and it works really, really well. I mean, more in the sense of like putting content out there, bringing value out there, putting yourself out there, your true self, not just the polished version, is what's gonna make businesses grow in 2026. Sorry, that's marketing in a sense. That's, I would call it influence, and that's how you build trust at scale in front of the right people.
That's well said.
Thank you. What's the a bit of a curveball for you, Jennifer? What's the number one challenge that you're facing right now? That one nut that if you crack, you're gonna take the whole thing to the next level. What are you working on right now that is challenging you and that you're looking forward to work on in 2026?
I definitely have an answer for that. I have lots of things. I have a new book that is a bit of a departure. It's not a, hey, leaders, this is how you do this. It's a book that interrogates the personal process of change. It's called The Shape of Change, and it's out this month, January 2026. And it's really my own journey of change, because my field, this won't surprise a lot of you listening to this, I used to, when I said I've done DEI for 20 years, I used to get like, here's my business card, call me. And now it's like, ooh, so sorry. So the change of seeing your field literally just be devastated by economic and political decisions has taxed me deeply. Like it has caused an existential crisis. And in writing, I want to build on what you just said. Writing authentically about what that has felt like is vulnerable for me. It is me walking the talk. It is me sharing like what this has felt like, and me also remembering leaders need to hear from someone who's going through it, because they are going through it as well. So whenever you can process things out loud, when you can, take your expert hat off and bring your wisdom, which is a different offering. Your wisdom is what AI cannot replicate, which is your intuition about this moment in time and being ruthlessly present. when I can't see forward to where am I going to focus, which I don't know yet, actually, where my sort of next focus area is going to be. I'm fascinated in a million topics, and I'm not quite sure yet. But I do know I'm sort of returning to what I do know, but I am really endeavoring to be a learner in public now. It's weird because I have all this expertise from 20 years of seeing it all and how it goes and teaching and bringing these models, right? But I think we're in a time where that is anybody that does that is, I'm not sure it's going to be trustworthy or authentic, because I think we're in this very chaotic, unclear time. So the thought leadership then is people who are able to maybe make some meaning out of it, synthesize some things, connect the dots, derive wisdom, comfort people, inspire people in spite of not having the answers, and not positioning yourself as someone, I'm going to solve this for you, or I'm going to build this for you, but an acknowledgement of what this moment feels like for humans. And if you can do that in a way that brings people to you, then I think the collective will begin to kind of chew on this and solve it together. But I think I've been reading a lot about the death of the expert, and that has been brought about with AI, right? AI can answer these things. What is expertise? If expertise is commoditized, who are we and what is our value? And I do believe it is that we are instruments that resonate with this moment. What does this feel like? How am I coping? How am I navigating it? What am I noticing? What sense can I make of this right now? And what sense are you making of this right now? Asking audiences different questions is so sort of positioning yourself not as on high on the mountain and imparting expertise, because I don't trust that right now. I mean, I think we're having a crisis in trust in leaders and trust in leadership and trust in experts. And, I can't even read business books from like 2 years ago, because the world has changed so much. So you can't nail it down right now. But what you can do is be an instrument for the moment. And so that is what I actually enjoy that question and sitting in that. It feels like it's a less of a burden on me to have all the answers, to guide people all the time, to really, it allows me to be in discovery mode and me to be curious. And I think that actually is my biggest gift, even beyond what I taught about DEI, is who I am as a person. So if you're listening to this and you've always been valued for your expertise, it's something to be curious about, because that expertise may not be what gets you paid in the future. So the question is going to be, what is your unique value proposition now that everything is changing so much?
Brown, ladies and gentlemen. Jennifer, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
Okay, so I'm on LinkedIn. Jennifer Brown Speaks is what I do business under, and I have an Instagram of the same name. And my new book is called The Shape of Change, and it's just coming out like literally this week, next week. Look for it online. I'm at jenniferbrownspeaks.com, and I think that's all the goodies. But my previous book, if you're really interested in inclusive leadership per se, my previous book is How to Be an Inclusive Leader. So that was from 2022, second edition. Pick that up. That is that how-to leadership guide. And then consider the new book, which is a really different take on things from me.
I'll put all the links in the description. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.